Welcome to the Culinary Treasure Podcast. I'm Steven Shomler, your host. Delighted that you're here. Sometimes you travel to a certain place and you just fall in love with it, and I have fallen in love with Bozeman, Montana. If you want to see all of my Bozeman content, be it travel articles or culinary articles or podcasts, you can go to adventuresinbozeman.com and see everything I have. But today I'm so excited. I'm back once again at Blacksmith Italian. It is one of the best restaurants in Bozeman, if not Montana. It is absolutely incredible. And last time I did a podcast here, I was with Corey Dragone, the chef, co-owner, co-founder. But today I am lucky enough. I have scored an interview with the co-founder, the co-owner, the visionary catalyst who made this place come to be. He's not happy with me right now because he doesn't like this kind of, but it's true. He's amazing. He's amazing. They call him the mayor of Montana. We'll talk about why during the podcast. But Steve Dragone, it is so great to have you on the Culinary Treasure Podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Steven. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you. I just, and I mentioned, you fall in love with a place, and then I fall in love with people. And I just, I love you. I love your son. Your restaurant is amazing. Your food's amazing. People just walk in and they feel it. And I mentioned the mayor of Bozeman. I've been here, lucky enough to be here a number of times for dinner. My son and I and his girlfriend are coming back tomorrow night for dinner. And it's so fun to see people walk in and see you. And they're so thrilled to see you and to hug you. And they're glad they haven't seen you in a long time because you've just built that kind of connection is precious. I mean, your son's cooking is off the chart incredible, but then to have also someone that people get to see that they just can't wait to see, that is just a huge benefit to what you guys are doing here.
Yep, thanks. We have to give people the whole experience, and that means taking good care of them, letting them know they're welcome, remembering their name, and making sure they're really happy when they leave. Okay, so questions I ask on all my podcasts. Where were you born? I was born in Rochester, New York.
And where'd you go to high school?
Went to Aquinas Institute, all-boys Catholic school.
Oh, that sounds horrible.
It was.
So what was the mascot there? Did they have one?
Well, we were kind of modeled after Notre Dame, so we were called the Little Irish, even though probably about half the students were Italian.
Okay, so that's high school. We're going to jump forward in time, and then I'm going to go back in time to kind of give people the shorthand version of your story. You moved to Bozeman in 2013. We're going to talk about that. And 5 weeks later, opened Blacksmith Italian here in Bozeman. But between high school and 2013, you really didn't work in the restaurant world. You primarily worked printing and manufacturing. You were in Rochester for a number of years, managing a factory. You spent some time in the Hudson Valley. Roughly 2010, you moved to California. You spent about 3 or 4 years working in that industry and a couple other industries in California. That's about right, correct?
Right. That's right.
No traditional, running restaurants, owning restaurants. This is your first restaurant.
No, not at all. Just a little bit of cooking when I was young.
Okay, so when did you first get the thought in your mind, the first thought, I might someday have a restaurant?
Well, probably the first inkling was around when Corey graduated from high school, and it was pretty obvious he was on a culinary path at that time, and I had no doubt that he would be successful. And I think he was feeling a little down because a lot of his friends were going off to college and that type of thing, and I encouraged him to just pursue what he loved, and that maybe someday we'd work together and open a restaurant.
That's an incredible. So he's an incredible chef. I've eaten lots of incredible chef's food. His food is on par with any chef, any food I've ever had anywhere in the world. And you believed in him back then. You saw where the path could go all the way back then.
Yes, I did.
As someone who had a dad who didn't believe in them, what a powerful gift you gave your son to have that sense, hey, you're going to make it.
Yeah, I guess, I'd never thought of it as a gift, but it was just something I believed. I knew it then.
Well, speaking from experience, a lot of us have had dads that said, you can't do it, you don't have what it takes, don't try this, don't try this, don't try that, who do you think you are? How many chef stories, they said, oh, I'll become a chef, and their family said, oh, you'll never make it. I mean, you didn't do any of that, did you?
No,
That's a gift, man. I'm telling you, that's a gift.
Yeah, Corey, Corey had some predecessors. His grandfather and his uncle, neither one of them were highly successful at bookwork in high school or in school at all.
So how far did your dad get?
My dad was dyslexic, grew up in the Depression, and they didn't know what to do with kids like him in those days. So after third grade, he dropped out of school. And he actually started working, on and off when he was really young.
Wow.
And that was primarily because he was dyslexic. But at the same hand, my dad could fix anything. He could talk to anyone at any level. And so he was an intelligent guy. He actually never really learned to read and write.
He just didn't have the book learning, but very intelligent.
He didn't. And my brother was actually a lot like Corey, not real studious in high school, but just not meant for it, but also definitely intelligent. And he kind of went into the trades, and he can also fix anything. And never any doubt about how smart he is. And Corey has his own style of intelligence. It's not what it's not what's gonna get you through college, or you're not going to become a doctor with that. But at the same time, he's smart.
He's deadly smart. Very smart. Okay. Again, I just think that's so awesome. First time I had the inkling, Corey's graduating high school, I might have a restaurant someday. So it brings me to a question. Where did your personal cooking journey begin? Did you cook in the kitchen when you were a kid or anything?
I don't think I probably was in the kitchen a lot when my mother was cooking. My mother was a great cook, and I had a habit of sampling what she was cooking before she was ready to serve it, and she would chase me out of the kitchen constantly with the wooden spoon, and she probably broke 4 wooden spoons chasing me around, and I would just buy her new wooden spoons for Christmas. And I did learn some things about cooking. My little sister and I used to I was probably in my late teens, and she was probably about 10, and we'd bake cookies together, and half the reason was I would get her to do all the cleanup. And so besides that, I mostly cooking was just a way to either feed myself, or I was a single parent, so I would have to cook for the boys.
Corey and his brother.
Yeah, Corey and his brother. And Corey would definitely dispute how good of a cook I was, but anyhow, we got by. It was good.
Okay, so there's a fun, amazing story. I just love how the universe works, the way things kind of, certain things come back into your life you don't expect in fun ways. But so you graduate college, and you went to SUNY Syracuse, right?
Yeah.
State University, New York in Syracuse.
That's right.
And that's just a beautiful place in the winter, Syracuse, I'm telling you. No, I'm just kidding. So, and you decided to hitchhike across the country, is that right?
Yes. Yep.
And that led to you have had just a handful of culinary jobs in your life because you're, printing and manufacturing, but that led to your first culinary job. Tell us about that.
Well, someone told me that I could probably, it was late in the summer around Labor Day weekend, and someone told me I could probably get a job in Yellowstone Park since the college kids had just left to go back to college. And so I did. I got a job at Mammoth Hot Springs in the restaurant, and the first night they had me scrubbing the walls, and I must have been doing a good job because the manager came out, told me I was doing a good job, and the next day they made me the sous chef.
So you stayed there in the fall till heavy winter started.
Yeah, I stayed there till the end of the season.
And then you what? Head back to Rochester.
Well, I finished my hitchhiking tour.
Okay.
And then went back to Rochester, worked as a cab driver over the late winter. And in the spring, my brother and I bought an old truck. And in those days, they used to rust like crazy. So we fixed it all up, did engine work, body work, and it had a camper on it. So I bought my brother out on it, and then I took that truck and went out west again. Ended up working at Lake Hotel in Yellowstone.
Okay, what I didn't say is the first time you're in Yellowstone, the previous season, you're at Mammoth
Hot Springs.
Mammoth Hot Springs. There's a hotel and a restaurant there.
Right.
So next season, you're back at Yellowstone, but now you're where? The Lake?
Lake Hotel.
Lake Hotel, and you're a cook there.
I'm a cook, and actually that's where I met Corey's mom, who was a bartender.
So let me ask you a question. During that time, did you ever come from Yellowstone into Bozeman? It's about an hour and a half away, hour and 20 minutes. Did you ever come into Bozeman at all?
One time, some friends needed a ride to the airport, so I went along because I was craving Dairy Queen.
What were you wanting?
So I was craving the Brownie Delight at the time. So I took that long ride. It was about a 4-hour ride, I think, from Lake Hotel into Bozeman, just so I could get a Brownie Delight.
And you probably had no idea that years later you would have a restaurant with your son here in Bozeman.
No.
Did that just blow your mind?
No clue at all.
Oh, and something that blows my mind, because, I did a podcast with Corey and told his story. Back then, it was the Portland Culinary Podcast. Did a podcast and told his story, how he got here. Now we're telling your story, which I absolutely love. But as I recall, you were a chef at the Lake in Yellowstone.
I was a cook.
You were a cook. And wasn't he the chef there years later?
Yeah, it really is an interesting story how it did go full circle. That his mom and I both worked there, and he ended up being the chef there.
That's incredible. So you must have done a stellar job, because Dragone, those are amazing chefs. We got to hire you, kid.
I don't think anyone was around from the days I was there, but I did probably help Corey with instill a sense of adventure with him, so he someday ended up in the West.
Okay, so you were in manufacturing, you in a restaurant now. 2010, you decided roughly, 2010, 2011 roughly, you wanted a career change. Is that right?
Yeah, I was in California. I was getting tired of what I was doing. Yes.
And so, if I understand correctly, you saw you're in the Bay Area, and you noticed a restaurant for sale in Monterey, and you thought, I'm going to open a restaurant with Corey. Is that accurate, roughly?
Well, I needed to talk to Corey first, but I called him and I said, what do you think of opening a restaurant together? And he's like, yeah, let's do it. And so at that point, I was like, yeah, I'm going to open a restaurant with Corey.
What an incredible thing. I get the joy of doing business with my son, Zach. We do a lot of business together. And to be in business with your son, we have a great relationship. It is such a joy. I don't know about you, but do you get a joy being a father, seeing how amazing your son's doing, making this thing happen?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I mean, he is a great chef. And so I'm really proud of his work. We were just voted greatest fine dining, not only greatest Italian, but greatest fine dining in Bozeman or in Gallatin County. And, it's great. I'm just so proud of him, and we share a lot of the same values. We're both pretty, we both have a great work ethic, and so we put in the time when we need to, and we make sure the results are great.
That is fantastic. What a joy it must have been. Hey, you ready to open a restaurant? Yeah, Dad, I'll open a restaurant with you. And so then you began about a 2.5-year journey trying to find where. So how did that process unfold of looking for a place to open a restaurant? Where are some of the places you looked and stopped and checked out?
Well, of course I was in California, and we were looking in California. And part of my personal concern was how many new restaurants fail. So I definitely wanted to find the spot that I felt like just knew we could be successful. And so personally looked at places in California. It's kind of interesting because once you sign the NDA agreement, you get to see the financials, and then you start to understand why certain restaurants fail. Or one restaurant I looked at in the Monterey area, they had sunk so much, all of their funds into remodeling, that they ran out of money before they could even open. And so you learn a lot of lessons just by looking. But anyhow, we were doing our search. I was doing the search in person, but also online. And so we found some. Corey was living in Portland at the time, so I went up to Portland. We looked at some places in Portland.
Corey wasn't just living in Portland. He had an incredible food cart that I had the joy of eating at. Weird name. I heart this cart. But the food was incredible. And that's why I first met him. So not only did he have, living there, but he had an amazing food cart.
He did. And so while he had the food cart, I went up and visited. We looked at some restaurant locations up there, but I think our final conclusion on Portland was that there were so many restaurants and food carts that it was really competitive.
Yeah, a lot of dining options in Portland.
Right. And so we even looked back in our own hometown just by, searching the internet or whatever.
So in
Rochester. And Buffalo, actually, where my other son lives, and didn't really feel like those places, weren't sure, but also maybe not ready to move back east either.
Yep.
So eventually we said, well, let's expand our search. We're struggling a little finding a place in California. And so where else would we be happy living? So let's maybe look at mountain towns. So we had, I think, we had like Jackson and Lake Tahoe and Bozeman on the list. And I found on Craigslist this restaurant that we're in now was listed for sale. But when I responded to the ad, whoever had posted the ad never replied, and I could not find any other information on this spot. And so I was a little frustrated. And then
because just from the Craigslist ad, it looked good to you.
Yes.
You'd been to Bozeman. Corey'd been to Bozeman. You'd both worked in Yellowstone, so it was a viable option.
Yes,
and
definitely.
You wanted to know, should we reel this fish in or not?
Exactly. And then what happened was I kind of set that opportunity aside, but then I got a text from my ex-wife, and she was driving through Bozeman on business and stopped for lunch. And of all places, she was traveling all over the West. For her territory was anything west of the Mississippi at the time. And of all the places she had traveled to, when she got to Bozeman, she texted me and said, "Have you looked in Bozeman? Because I think you would love it."
Yeah, people don't understand. I mean, there's a handful. I love where I live in the Northwest, the Portland area. There's very few places that I want to live other than that. And Bozeman is on that list. And there's maybe 3 places, because it is just, if you haven't been here, it's amazing here. I'm okay with winter. You have to be okay with winter because you have, you have like 9 months of it. But it's not quite as bad as Minnesota, but reminiscent.
Yeah.
But people understand how amazing it is. But she knew you enough to know, and you saw she was your ex-wife, had a good relationship, obviously, that you'd like it here. So what'd you say? She's on the phone. She's at lunch. How did you reply?
So I said, well, you know what? There is a restaurant there for sale, but I haven't been able to get any information on it. Do you have time to go look at it?
Because you had the address.
Yes, I had the address, and so she drove down here, peeked in the window. At the time, Sola Cafe was really busy, and she saw the traffic in and out of Sola. And she said, this looks good. And so I still wasn't able to find any information. There was I guess there weren't even any signs in the window when she came to look at it. So, but there was another restaurant spot on the other end of this plaza open. And so I contacted that landlord, and Corey and I came out to look at that space, and then while we were here, we found information on this space. And so right away, once we got here, we knew it was right.
You knew this, not only was this space going to work, but this town was going to work not only for a restaurant, but your sense was we could live here. This could be home.
Well, I think more than the space itself, I think the town we knew was going to work initially. And then we were looking, we had this option, we had the option at the other end of the plaza, and we were even looking at other options in town. And then eventually we were able to work out a deal in this space.
So you signed a lease, you moved here in 2013, and how long did you work remodeling before you opened? How long were you here?
We opened 5 weeks after we moved to town, so we started working the day after we got to town on the remodel. Corey spent a lot of time finding vendors and working on his recipes. So I was in charge of most of the remodeling, which quite honestly, I did most of the work myself. Corey just happened to have a friend who was looking for work, and turns out he was a young guy, but his dad, I guess, is one of the best finished carpenters in Texas, and this kid was good. So he and I built booths together and tables, and there was painting involved. We had to scrape, it was a Thai restaurant before, we had to scrape ferns out of the plaster in the walls and replaster over that and paint. But 5 weeks after we got here, we opened.
Wow. And we don't need to get into details, but the other amazing thing is that you were able to also to get a wine license. And liquor licenses and wine licenses in Montana are more expensive than anyone could ever imagine. Right? I mean, just...
Absolutely. So when we were looking at the restaurant in the Willamette Valley,
down in Portland area.
Yeah, Portland area, Oregon. The owners told us, I renew my license every year, $400. So my thinking coming to Montana was, well, if Oregon's $400, then Montana's probably $200. So I got here, and at the time, the full liquor licenses were going for about $700,000 or $800,000. The economy was still pulling itself out of that recession, and the wine license, which I ended up buying, was $120,000.
That's a big check to write just to sell wine.
Yeah, and so that was kind of a shock, and it also luckily the banks here know the value of them, and they were willing to help us with a loan.
And they go up in value. When I first started up in Bozeman 3 years ago, a full liquor license, I was told is roughly $1 million, and I'm told it's roughly now $1.2 million just 3 years later.
Oh yeah, no, that's it's supply and demand, and the supply is short.
Yeah, because they'd only have so many.
Right.
Right. And yep.
And the restaurant scene's been growing, and so the supply of licenses isn't keeping up. It's based on population, but the population isn't growing as fast as the restaurant scene.
And the demand for it. And
the demand.
And you get a lot of tourists.
Yes.
Lots of tourists, particularly here in Bozeman, because people are headed to ski in the winter. Amazing skiing here. And then this is one of the gateway towns that people come here on their way through to Yellowstone.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
And nothing wrong with the tourist season, but I'm telling you, I've been here in September, October. I've been here in February, March, April. I've even been here in January, and there's not a bad time to come. Okay, so what's your version of the story? So you open up a restaurant, but you decide it's going to be Italian. What's your version of the story? Why did you choose Italian cuisine?
Well, Corey said we should do Italian, and I just trusted him, and he was right on. Once we started building, we were in here remodeling. People would stop in and say, one of the comments was, whatever they're doing at the other Italian restaurant in town, you guys need to do the opposite because it's not very good.
But people were excited for good Italian.
They were, and And so we actually, when we opened, we were busy right off the bat. We were the place to be, which is, every restaurant gets its honeymoon period, but ours sustained for quite a while. And so we hit the floor running.
It's an interesting thing about Italian cuisine. I absolutely love Italian cuisine, and I don't care if it's traditional Italian cuisine or Italian American cuisine, which in my head are different. But many of the places I've been to in the United States, even in Portland, I hear people complain, "Oh, there's no good Italian restaurants around here." And then I'd say, "Well, have you been to Barasca?" Because they used to be a food cart, and Paulo grew up standing on a big soup can, in Florence, Italy, cooking in his grandma's kitchen, and always was front of house, and finally had a dream. He had a food cart and then a restaurant. Like, he's got a good Italian food. What are you talking about? But it's funny how it's very common, it seems like, in lots of parts of the country for there to be average or not very good Italian food. And when someone has really good Italian restaurant in America, man, it takes off.
Yeah. As we probably said already, Corey's a great chef. And when I go back to Rochester now, it's surprising that, it's full of Italian restaurants, and but most of the food is mediocre compared to what Corey's doing. And so, we have folks from New York City, the New Jersey area, all over the East Coast, telling us how great the Italian food is. So they have a lot of options where they're from, and a lot of times we hear people saying, "Well, I can't wait till the summertime, when I spend the summer in Bozeman, so that I can eat at Blacksmith." So,
awesome.
so we're doing it right.
So you grew up in an Italian family?
Yes,
as a young child.
Yep.
And how does it feel to be going back to those kind of roots, culinary-wise?
Culinary-wise or whatever, it's good to get in touch with the Italian roots. We have these photos of my family on the wall, and I'm really proud of my ancestry and my family.
That's awesome. So I got goosebumps just thinking about all of that and what the story I'm about to tell. But we're sitting in the new other half, basically. So 2019, end of 2019, you rented the space next door.
That's right.
And in 2020, you open up, you've added expanded seating. That's where we're recording this podcast now. And as I'm looking off to my right, there's this beautiful, huge family photo. That's a meal I wish I could eat at. Those are people I wish I could break bread with. Tell me about this huge photo.
Well, that's my family. I'm actually partially in the photo as probably about a 5-year-old.
So that's your forehead down in the lower right corner.
That's right. That's my forehead down there, and my parents right behind me, and then all the Italian aunts and uncles. There's bottles all over the table. My one uncle has Uncle Mario. Looks like he's got, it's not a beer bottle. I think it's a liquor bottle.
It looks like he's got some whiskey or something.
Yeah. And my aunt is eating a piece of wedding cake with her hand. And so it's very festive, and everybody's happy. And that's exactly the tone we want to set for Blacksmith Italian also, is a festive environment where people can get together, have fun, and feel really good when they leave.
Yeah, it's just a happy, joyful photo. Now that thing is, I'm not good at this, but it's what, 8 feet?
Yeah, it's 8 feet long.
8 feet long and about 5 feet high?
Yep.
That's a big photo. How did that photo end up? Because I'm sure it wasn't that big when it was first taken.
No, I actually was, I knew getting it blown up and for it to still look clear was going to be a challenge. It's an old black and white photo, and so I was actually discussing my challenge with a customer one day, and he said, "Well, you know what? I have a good friend in Colorado, one of my best friends, and he has a business blowing up photography for different purposes, and he can print it on anything." He said, "Send me the photo, and I'll see what I could do with it." And I did. They sent me a couple of proofs to make sure that I thought it looked good. Once it was blown up, they sent a partial of the photo. And I was like, yeah, this looks great. They blew it up to this size, framed it, and shipped it from Colorado to Bozeman and never sent me an invoice. I even tried to get an invoice out of him. I don't even know this guy, but it just because his buddy is a good customer here, he did it for us. So if he ever shows up, yeah, if he ever shows up, he's, he says he's looking for a bowl of pasta and a bottle of wine, and but he'll be treated great. But it's just amazing. Just another one of those things as a restaurant owner, things that can happen that are totally surprising.
Yeah, I love this photo. It sets off the space beautifully. And if people are listening to this podcast and they want to see this photo, I'll post a picture of it on social media. But also, you can go to the website, culinarytreasurepodcast.com, and I'll have this article there accompanying this podcast with this photo, a photo of this photo. Okay, and looking over to my left, there's two other littler photos. So tell me about these two littler photos.
So the first one is my dad on a really old school bicycle, and with his mother, Grandma Mary, sitting on the back fender. And my dad was, his official name was Donato, but Danny. He was always called Danny until he became a grandfather and then became Papa. But even as an adult, he was always called Danny. And then the next photo over is from my childhood, and it's my sister Cynthia, myself, and my, at the time, best friend, Joey Gretadaria. So it's just a cute picture of us sitting on the front stoop
that is just in
Rochester,
photo.
New York.
So where'd the name Blacksmith Italian come from?
So my grandfather, Donato's dad, was blacksmith. And so he was trained, in his day, you didn't go to high school, you started learning your trade as a teenager. So he was trained as a teenager, and then when he was originally like 18, he came to the United States, started practicing as a blacksmith. A couple years later, him and his brother went back to Italy to find wives. And so they went to the town matchmaker, and she said, well, you know what? I know a couple women in the next town. So they went over the hill, and my grandmother and her friend ended up marrying my grandfather and his brother. And they lived in Italy for, I think, a couple years. A couple of my uncles were born in Italy and then came back to the United States, moved to Rochester, and in different fashion, my grandfather worked his whole career as a blacksmith. He started out working for Wagon-Right, so he was like putting the steel rims on wheels and then shoeing the horses. And then as trucks became, kind of took over from the horse and wagon, he actually had his own horse and wagon, and he had his independent blacksmith business. So anyone who still had horses, or the racetrack, or the Genesee Brewing 12-horse team, he was shoeing those horses. So he did that for a long time, and then eventually when that started to die, he worked for the city of Rochester, making tools and building fences and stuff like that.
So Blacksmith Italian is an homage to your grandfather.
Definitely.
To Corey's great-grandfather.
Yes.
Yeah, and that I'm so glad that he moved back to Rochester from Italy so that I could be here eating this amazing food.
Yeah, that's right. No, it all started from that. I think there's a little bit of tie-in. You think of blacksmith as somewhat of an artisan, and that's how Corey looks at his cooking also.
Okay, so the mayor of Bozeman, Corey calls you that. I've seen it. People love you when you're out and about. They know you, and it's not a political thing. It just means you seem to know everybody. Talk to me about that.
That's definitely an exaggeration.
Maybe.
But I enjoy people. And, whether it's from meeting people here in the restaurant or being out socializing. So I've gotten to know a lot of people. And I've learned, treat people well, and so I do, and I think they like me for it, and so I have a lot of friends.
And you're doing old school connecting, and no offense to your Instagram or your Facebook, you're not as active there. You're actually connecting people face to face and getting to know them, and you're doing old school, networking. It's pretty impressive.
Oh, thanks. It's enjoyable to get to know people, and there's so many great stories in Bozeman. There's you go from whether it's young people on an adventure, or you have some very successful people that sometimes have more money than you can even imagine, but they're so humble, you would never know it. And just a lot of great stories in Bozeman. So I've enjoyed getting to know a lot of people.
So when my kids were young, I had them all read Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I think it's a classic that everyone should read 3 or 4 times in their life. And it's, it gets a bad rap sometimes. It is not a book that will give you the skills to have deep, authentic, intimate relationships. It will give you the basic people skills you need to have those, to begin those deep, authentic relationships. Without people skills, I don't think you're going to make it. How do you think people skills are as important to the success you've had here at Blacksmith Italian?
I definitely think that people skills are, besides Corey's food, though, they're the most important element. Whether it's as a manager working with the staff or dealing with the customers, people skills are really what it's all about. We try really hard to make sure people feel welcome. We try to give them the best experience they can have. I like to tell the story about how sometimes we get some kind of, I'll call them arrogant people that come in from maybe California, and they come in here and they think they're too good for Bozeman or too good for any Italian restaurant in Bozeman. And I'll see them walk in the door, and you can tell their attitude right off the bat. And I'll say to the server, I'll say, I actually have said to them, find out what part of California they're from, and she'll come back after her first visit to the table and say, oh yeah, they're from California. But you know what? By the end of their experience here, they're happy as could be. They're thanking us. Maybe the wine helped a little bit, but it's great to take on those challenges sometimes where you come in with people, whether like with an attitude, or they come in a little bit unhappy for whatever reason, and then to see them leave happy. Those are the things we live for here at Blacksmith.
So tell me about what you did when you were 32.
Well, when I was 32, I actually took the Dale Carnegie course, and
how come?
And I, as part of my management, leadership and management development, I did it through work with one other coworker. But we were a big class. We were probably 40 people in that class, and it was very active class, I guess you could say. People would cry when they were doing their speeches. A lot of emotion, a lot of growth for people. But at the end of that, I was a fairly shy young man, and I would say that was a breakthrough for me. I realized at the end of that class I was one of the more popular people. Once folks heard my story, and I also, that's when I realized that everyone's pretty much on an equal playing field. It doesn't matter how much money you come from. It doesn't matter how popular you are. We all have we not only all put our pants on one leg at a time, but we all have our challenges too. And so that was eye-opening for me.
So from using a college metaphor, I think how to win friends, influence people, some of the stuff they teach, that's maybe 101 and 201. But in my head, you then had some training later, professional training, that in my head is like 301 or 401. All right, you said.
Yeah, so as a manager, it was important to know people. And as a young supervisor and manager, we were taught, manage by facts and data. And quite honestly, a lot of my early managers, I developed my management style by doing the opposite of what they did. I had a lot of bad managers. And so anyhow, one point in my career, we were, leadership development. We had a leadership coach who turned me on to emotional intelligence.
EQ.
Yes.
Powerful stuff.
And so, reading those books and discussing it, we went from facts and data to understanding people and listening to people, and that's again, the most important skill as a manager, and also probably as a restaurateur, is to listen to people. You don't always have to do what they're asking, but you have to. You should listen, and if you can, give them a good explanation of why you're not doing it the way they would like it done. And so that brought the whole thing to another level. I had great success with it in the packaging business. Saved just by listening to people and having them involved in decisions. Saved our company hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, believe it or not.
That's amazing.
And so, it's definitely a great lesson. And, and some of those skills are getting applied here at Blacksmith, and, listening to customers, making them feel good about themselves, helping them out, maybe they're having a bad day or something like that. It's all important.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to check out some good books on EQ, there's a number of them. One of my favorite emotional intelligent authors is Daniel Goleman, Goleman.
Yep.
Might want to check that out. So 2010, 2011, you want to change your career. And you pulled it off. And you seem happy. Am I right? Are you as happy as you seem?
I'm enjoying this.
And are you fulfilled?
I am.
I can't tell you how much. It's one of my passions of mine. Fulfillment matters. I think I own that, fulfillmentmatters.com. I have anything with it yet. But so many people have full careers and lives, professional lives and personal lives that are just not fulfilling. And it's a heartache to me. And I love it when someone changes their career and they end up happy and fulfilled. That's just incredible.
Yeah, I think I'm actually lucky I found this path later in life, because if I probably started out in the restaurant business as a young man, I'd probably be burnt out or a drug addict by now. So it is a challenging business, but the challenges are actually part of the fun.
Okay, I want to shift talking a little bit about food. Your I said to you, hey, your menu changes every week, and you said it changes every day. It's seasonal, and Corey has these farmers and these people that bring in this amazing stuff. I was talking to Zach. My son Zach asked me yesterday about, what makes a restaurant more expensive than another? And I said, well, what they charge. And he says, yeah, very funny, but he wanted to know why. And I said, well, part of it's ingredients. And then I literally told him about Corey and all the different farmers he works with, and you can just go to certain types of grocery outlet to get your food, or you can get really good quality. And Corey's got all this amazing stuff came in. So the menu changes all the time, but some things that are always on the menu: your beef tenderloin, Piedmontese, certified Piedmontese. I wrote an article for Culinary Treasure Network that has beautiful photos, so stinking good. And then I had a dessert that's almost always on the menu, blew my mind. I wrote a separate article just about that.
The salted caramel butterscotch budino.
Oh, yeah. It's
we have
incredible.
People that tell us they dream about that one.
So there's a number of things that come and go, but those are some things that are always on the menu. What are some of your personal favorite things to eat here?
So I always recommend, if someone's looking for the pasta dish, the ravioli bolognese. It's just it's a ravioli stuffed with fresh ricotta that we make in-house. And our sauce is delicious. And so if you're looking, all of our pastas are good. Our carbonara
and
is
you guys
incredible.
make the pasta right here.
We make fresh pasta. If you all day long, every day, you'll see Julie over there making pasta. And so the pasta's fresh. We're using Montana flour to make the pasta. So, a lot of people don't realize that Montana is one of the biggest suppliers of flour for pasta in the world. We actually ship flour to Italy. And sometimes it comes back to the United States as pasta. Barilla is buying flour from Montana to make pasta here in the United States. And but we make sure we use Montana flour, so that big part of our menu is local. And so again, another reason to be proud of what we do.
Okay, and then something interesting. Now, Corey, he puts together all of the food items on the menu. That's
exactly.
That's
it's all
world.
him. Yep.
But there is a pretty incredible wine list here, and Corey doesn't put that together. You put that together. You could say you're the sommelier here. Did you grow up loving wine? Did you teach yourself wine? Because it's impressive.
I never knew too much about wine. I was primarily a beer drinker. Sometimes I'd get some wine with my dinner. And in Rochester, I think there was basically 3 types of wine: Montepulciano, Chianti, and one more I can't think of right now. And that's pretty much what every Italian restaurant carried. And so when we opened, we originally thought that Corey was going to be the wine guy because he had more experience in the restaurant business. He had a more developed palate than I have. And it just turned out that he was too busy. So by default, I became the wine guy, I guess you can call it. And I had a lot to learn, but our wine vendors have been very helpful. And as time goes on, I've gotten him to appreciate wine a lot more and understand it a lot more. I concentrate primarily on Italian wine. I really, to this day, still know very little about French wine. I know something about domestic wine, but over the 6.5 years we've been here, I do feel like we've developed a pretty good wine list, and I feel as though I've had some very high-end wine. We've had some very high-end wine people in here, and sometimes they're actually surprised at some of the wines we have on the list.
Yeah, and I love it. You've got an amazing. You've got wine by the bottle. You've got a reserve list that is incredible, but then you also have wine by the glass. And I often travel alone, and when I can handle 3 glasses of wine. I love a sparkling to start. It's just fun for me. Maybe a white, maybe red, just kind of sample the thing. Sure. And I can do that here. And I love that you allow for that flexibility, whether it's a bottle of wine, an incredibly amazing bottle of wine off the reserve, or just by the glass.
Oh yeah, and I think most restaurants try to offer wine by the glass, but we have a good selection of both domestic and Italian. So that an Italian wine goes so well with our food.
Yep. And I just, I also happen to also do the craft beer podcast, and I give a shout out. You have a good beer list. I mean, you've got some of my favorites. You've got Matt Brewing, you've got Mountains Walking, you've got Bozeman Brewing. I love Scott at Bozeman Brewing. And I just saw rolling in, a guy brought in some Reverend Nat's hard cider, which warmed my heart.
Yeah,
right there from Portland. I know Nat's a friend of mine. I love him. He's done an amazing job. So if someone's like, I don't know about wine, well, you really have some really good beer and even a couple ciders on here. So that's That's impressive.
Yeah, every once in a while we get someone who's disappointed because we don't have Bud Light on the menu, but we can live with that.
So does Bozeman feel like home now?
It does. It's a great town, and it does feel like home.
Now, do you ski?
I have skied, but
really?
I haven't. It's not my focus. I don't ski very much.
Yeah, I just mentioned that because I don't ski, and I love Bozeman, so you can come here for more than the skiing. But I love hiking. There's some pretty good hikes around here, aren't there?
Yeah, there are, and I love to hike. And I actually, in the last few years, I set some goals, and I'm hiking. I hiked a couple mountains that probably 15 years ago I thought I had absolutely no chance of hiking, and I actually last summer I hooked up with a new hiking partner, and her and I climbed a mountain that, like I said, in 1996 2006 when I was visiting Corey in Yellowstone. I looked at that mountain and I thought, well, I'd love to climb it, but I probably never will. And climbed that mountain last year.
So 15 years later.
Yes.
Wow, that's impressive.
So Bozeman's good for my health also.
So as much as I love the outdoor scene, which everybody celebrates in Bozeman, I love the culinary scene. There's a lot of really good restaurants. There's a lot of fun places to eat or drink. What's a good place to get cocktails around here? I love me a good cocktail for dinner.
So I'll go to Plonk. Open Range is another one. There's Room 1, which is a small little like martini-style bar down on the corner of Rouse and Main. And so that's 3 right there.
Where would you go if you had to relapse and get a Rainier?
Oh, I love the Cannery, actually. And it's funny because I've turned all my friends on to Rainier, and so that's the place.
Okay, and have you, I'm sure you have, but have you been to the Crystal?
Oh, I love the Crystal. That's the restaurant workers hangout. So late night, go in there and you're going to see a lot of cooks and servers and that type of thing in the Crystal, besides a bunch of other folks. It's a fun place.
And I've learned that. And then if it's not late night and it's earlier in the evening, like 8 or 9 o'clock, and there's too many hipsters in the Crystal, I've discovered you can escape and go over to the Eagles and have a beer over there or shot a whiskey.
The Eagles is a great place. And, I'm not sure how much it costs right now, but it was... when I first got to town, you could still get a beer for $1.50 at the Eagles.
Yeah, it's crazy there. It's a different place. It's good if you want to drink with friends, or if you just want to drink alone and quiet. It's like some hardcore drinkers are there sometimes. Right. Now, have you been to the Hofbrau? It's one of my
I finally visited the Hofbrau probably about 10 months ago for the first time, and. It was because one of our servers was playing music in there, so I went to see the music playing. And funny thing is, when I walked in the door, the first thing I said was it was a combination of the decor and the clientele. I walked in there and I said, "Wow, this is like walking onto a pirate ship."
There is so many artifacts, treasures hanging from the ceiling. It is incredible. And my first year I came to Bozeman, I did a podcast with the owner of the Hofbrau, Don, and it was just amazing because he spent half the podcast pointing to things on the story and telling their ceiling why they ended up there. And it's just a fun dive bar, and it's a good place to have a bad burger. Just that, you want that bad dive bar burger. They've got a good one.
Yeah, I'll have to try it. I've heard about it, and it's on my list.
And you understood my quality. I'm not saying it's an amazing burger. I'm saying it's a good dive bar burger.
I still have to try it.
I love it. I just want to I want people disappointed.
Yeah.
Okay, and then one other fun thing that you've taken advantage of that I'm on the front end of doing is within about an hour drive, there's fine dining, and then there's fun dining, where you'll get an okay meal, but it's the whole experience. And there's some crazy steakhouses, unconventional around here. I love Sir Scott's Oasis out in Manhattan. That's just a different place.
Yeah, no, there's 3 places, and that's one of them, and they're all amazing. You have to do it.
And what are the other two?
So Stacy's Old Faithful out in Gallatin Gateway, and that's like walking into an old Western bar. And so you have to go there just for the ambiance. And then Sir Scott's Oasis, and then we mentioned, and then the other one is the Land of Magic,
and that's out Three Forks Way. Get about an hour from here. Out Three Forks Way.
Not even an hour. 45 minutes.
45 minutes.
And easy drive. And I actually just finally went there over the holidays for the first time. But again, great food. There's couple tables of cowboys, cowgirls in there always, so fun and good food.
Yeah, I mention these places because, I want people to come to Bozeman. I want to come to Blacksmith Italian at least twice when they're here. They need to stay for a week. There's a lot of amazing places to eat and drink, really good stuff. I love Sashimi Bar. Oh my gosh, best sushi I've ever had. Those guys are crazy. They're out of their minds.
They are out of their minds.
But the food
they're our great friends though too.
I love them. Their food's incredible. It's one of the best culinary experiences I've ever had in my life. But then take a day trip and head off to one of these little fun things, about an hour away, because it's a different world. The last one I'll mention, which I'm headed to Friday for the first time, but I've had lots of recommendations. The Pony Bar in Pony, Montana.
Oh yeah. The Pony Bar is middle of nowhere, up against the Tobacco Root Mountains. The town is broken down, but the Pony Bar is it's just a destination. You got to go there. If you go there on a Sunday afternoon, chances are there's going to be a lot of motorcycles out front. But definitely, I saw a poll a couple of years ago, and I think it was voted the best dive bar in Montana.
Well, I love me a good dive bar. I'm excited.
Yeah, you're going to love it, Stephen.
Well, Steve, thank you so much for having us, coming on the show, the podcast as a guest. I love what you guys do. My son Zach and his girlfriend are coming to dinner tomorrow night. I've been, so I'm very careful when I see a movie I love to say this is a good movie. I don't say it's a great movie. I don't want to oversell anything. I've been overselling the heck out of dinner tomorrow night because you can't oversell it. I mean, the food is that good. The experience, it's going to be amazing comfort food, the highest quality. I know Zach's going to have his mind blown. And so I'm just thrilled you're here, thrilled to tell your story. And I just want to close and tell everybody, come to Bozeman. And while you're here, make sure you come to Blacksmith Italian.
Thanks, Stephen. I wasn't expecting to see you so soon. And so I'm really glad you made it this week. And it's always good to see you.
Always good to see you. I'm a big fan. Cheers. All the best to you and Corey and your staff.
Thanks.